Hey, this is Austin Harman Mixes, and today we're going to cover a very special topic. Before you click away, I want to tell you about something super important. This video and my next video, which is going to be titled How to Mix Loud, are some of the most important videos I've ever come up with. I've been thinking about these topics for quite a long time, sometimes at 3 a.m., which is my best thinking time. Shout out to the 3 a.m. thinkers in the comment below if you're that way. I've been thinking about this content for quite some time. I've been behind the desk for quite some time, and I want to give you the tips on how to handle, first, what happens when somebody complains, and in the next video, I'm going to be talking about how to actually mix loud without sending everybody to the doors. If you're excited for that content, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, and let's go on this journey together. Jumping in, if you've been in the audio world for a while, you know that mixing audio is an art form, and it's very technical, it's very precise, and that is why many of the people who are in this industry love it so much. But it can be incredibly challenging to meet everybody's expectations. I once heard, you have 2 ears and therefore everybody has 2 opinions. Either you're good or you suck. And the simple reality is that over the last 20 years being an audio professional, I have encountered people who love my mixes and people who hate my mixes, sometimes in the same room, sometimes within the same hour, sometimes within 10 minutes. And it can be very challenging to sort out, how do you handle audio complaints? How do you make everybody happy? Is it a you thing? Is it the venue? Is it the management? Is it the band? Is it the church? Is it the pastor? Are they just old? Are they frustrated? What is going on? And it seems like sometimes the complaints come out of nowhere, sometimes they don't make any sense, and sometimes it's just like, man, you hear the same thing over and over and over again and you can't even fix it. Today we're going to dive into all of that. First, let's get started with my personal favorite story, which is when I got the cops called on me behind the desk. Hey, this is Austin Harman Mixes here, and today I wanted to tell you about our very first channel sponsor, 918 Prints. 918 Prints is an amazing company located in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they are equipped to do all of your printing, from business cards to flyers to signs to mailers. 918 Prints is fantastic. They make great quality printed materials. I personally just ordered some business cards for my wife's real estate business. They showed up fast, high quality with rounded edges. They looked great. I highly recommend 918 Prints. You can find the information for 918 Prints in the description below. Now let's get back to the video. Some number of years ago, I was running audio on a big PA in a local church here in Ohio, and we were rocking and rolling about 93, 94 dB average, and I looked to my right, and a police officer had come into the venue and walked up to me and basically said, "Turn it down or you're going to jail." Now, in that moment, I'd like to say that I reacted in a professional manner, but I can honestly say I said, "Did you measure how loud it was?" The police officer certainly didn't like that. Highly recommend don't actually saying that. Anyway, we got all that sorted out, but that was definitely a wild day. There have been so many days like that behind the desk, not just with police officers, but with people who have come up and given honest, heartfelt feedback about the way that it sounds. In some cases, they think, okay, the bass is too loud, or they think the vocals are too loud, or it sounds really loud. Or in some cases, they can't hear something they'd like to hear, so on and so forth. Now, as audio engineers, we have a lot of people to please all at the same time, and it can be very difficult to actually please everybody. In fact, if we look at this from a numbers perspective, say you're mixing in a venue with 1,000 people. If just 1% of those people get pissed off by your mix, you have now hacked off 10 people. And if those 10 people complain, that's 1% of everybody who's attended complaining. That's a lot of complaints for one venue and one show. I can honestly say I've never fortunately had that number of complaints, but just an example from a numbers perspective to see, it doesn't really take a large percentage of the populace who doesn't like something before the complaints start rolling in. Now, over time, one of the things that can happen is you start to wonder, is this a me thing? When those complaints roll in, am I a problem? Because sometimes the complaints don't stop coming even when you try and do the right things. I have talked to touring engineers who actually say they hate front of house and they won't run it anymore because front of house gets all the complaints. Over the years behind the desk, I've created a 3-step process on how to handle audio complaints. Step number 1, very simple. You're just going to respect, okay? We're just going to respect. When somebody brings a complaint to us, we're going to respect the person. We're going to listen, we're going to give positive body language, and we're going to respect what they have to say. Now, I can honestly say that this one is a little bit harder than it seems. I have been behind the desk for a long time, and I have gotten complaints, and the first thing I wanted to do is punch the person because it's my mix. I know what I'm doing, I'm a professional, but that's not the way that we handle audio complaints. Everybody who is in this space has a talent, and that talent was given to us by God. And because of that, we have a responsibility to steward our talent in a way that honors and glorifies God in every opportunity that we have. So when somebody brings us an honest, heartfelt complaint, we're going to respect them. Step number 2, we're going to understand. We're going to understand because audio isn't always so easy to communicate about. I tell this story to engineers that I'm training. Years ago, I was working a venue where I was doing a lot of shows on a single day over a long period of time. I worked at this venue for about 4 years, and because I was doing a large volume of shows, the amount of complaints that would come in would kind of vary up and down. So one day, the head guy, who I consider to be my boss, he was the music director, came up to me and he said, "Austin, it kind of sounds like this." And I'm not going to repeat the word that he said, but he just said, "It kind of sounds like this." Now, the way that he said it, I interpreted the word that he used to be very boxy, sounding like this. So I reacted, and I turned out the mids, and I kind of did some various things to the mix to try and clean it up a little bit. And the volume of that complaint started to rise from the head guy. He came back to me pretty fired up after the next show, and he was like, "Hey, what the heck? I told you it sounds like this. What are you doing? It seems like it's not getting any better." And by the third time, it was basically fix it or you're out. And at that point, I had a decision to make because I definitely didn't want to lose the gig. And I said, "Can you explain to me a little bit about what you're feeling? What are you hearing?" And what he described wasn't boxiness like this. What he described was a lot of harshness, a lot of S's. And unbeknownst to me and to him, because I didn't understand what he was saying, I actually made the problem worse and caused myself quite a bit of trouble in the process. What are we going to do when we get complaints? We're going to respect, and then we're going to understand. Finally, we're going to react. We respect, we understand, then we react. Now, why do I say react instead of say turn it up or punch the guy or something along those lines? We react because at times, depending on which venue you're mixing in or depending on the environment or the context, turning it down or adjusting some part of the mix may actually not be feasible. Let me explain. Whenever you show up to a venue, some venues or some organizations and some churches have the expectation for their sound to sound a certain way. I attended a house of worship years ago that had the expectation of running 105 dBA at front of house, which was about 75 feet from the PA in this building. It was a huge building, and at any given time between 1,500 and 2,500 people would be in this space to worship together. Now, you can imagine that size of space, the need for that music to feel big, to feel powerful, to feel in your face was present. Because if they turned it down to, say, 85, then the music would feel very dead and the room would not feel alive with that scale. So the directors of the production team at that specific venue were very, very passionate about ensuring that the volume hit a specific threshold and represented a specific feel of that venue. I think so often the reason why sound engineers field so many complaints and struggle with how to actually handle them isn't because the sound engineer doesn't know what they're doing. It's because the leadership of the venue, the space, the team, the production, whoever, has not defined the style. Defining the style, defining the heart behind why it is that you do what you do is important, because you can't make everybody happy. And you have to have a philosophy to stand on to ensure that when the complaints inevitably come in, you can say without a doubt, you know what, this is why we do X, Y, and Z. This is why we roll 95 dBA on a Sunday morning. It's because when we roll 95 dBA slow on a Sunday morning, the person standing next to me can't hear me singing at the top of my lungs. And I like that because it makes me comfortable. That's a strong why. And if you have a strong why, the conversation isn't about how do we respond to complaints. It's about how do we react. Because if somebody brings us a complaint that says, you know what, it's too loud, and say we're rolling 95 and that's the target, then the conversation isn't, well, let's turn it down. The conversation is, let's help our congregant or attendee understand why we're rolling at this volume. Now, on the flip side, let's talk about the other scenario where you are supposed to be running at 95, and I have definitely been guilty of this over my career because we all love to rock. And in reality, you're supposed to be, you're running at 95, but in reality, you're supposed to be running at 93. And the complaints come in. And I've got something very simple. It's very full of wisdom. I hope you hear this. Freaking turn it down. Just turn it down. Just turn it down. That's all you got to do. If you're too loud, turn it down. And if you turn it down, you'll keep the gig and make everybody happy. One last thing I'll leave you with is, over the years, I've learned something about being an audio engineer. The first thing is that when you're talented, you start to learn you're talented because other people will tell you you're talented. And at some point, your talent runs out and you have to practice and practice and practice. And eventually, you hit mastery at around 10,000 hours. And once you hit mastery, where do you go from there? Well, you enter into what I call the polarizer, which is you become so good at your craft, you actually start to polarize the people around you. Let me give you an example. Taylor Swift is one of the best musicians that has ever walked this planet. She has made more money than anybody else doing music. She plays for more people. She has music. She has all of this stuff. She's been doing it for many, many years. And at her talent level, she's one of the best there is. She's still polarizing. In fact, if you immediately went to the comment section to tell me how wrong I am about how good Taylor Swift is, this is probably a great example for you. Taylor Swift is so good at what she does, she is polarizing. And when we become so good at what we do, we become polarizing. Why? The reality is simple. When you become good, you care about the product, and therefore you're willing to fight for a situation in which you can succeed. Or you're willing to fight for the details that matter to produce an excellent product. In some cases, you may be fighting a lot of stage noise. You're probably fighting to put a drum shield in. In some situations, you may be fighting a bad PA, so it sounds loud no matter what you do. So you're fighting to put a better speaker system in. When we fight for the things that matter, we are polarized. We are beyond mastery. We have become polarizers. I challenge you as you run audio, when you have complaints that come in, remember, we have to respect, we have to understand, we have to react. But as polarizers, we have to make sure that our passion for delivering excellence does not outweigh what honest people are telling us around us. We're not always right. And I say this for me too, because I can definitely be very passionate and fired up behind the desk. I try to humble myself. I actually made this video for me as a reminder. We are to understand and react and respect. Respect first, respect, understand, react. And we are to treat people as if we wanted to be treated. We are audio engineers, we are artists, but we also have a responsibility for the people who attend our venues. This has been Austin Harman Mixes. I really hope you enjoyed this content. If you learned something or agreed with what I said or didn't say, leave me a comment. I would love to have a conversation with you and continue talking about this topic as we go forward.